Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for August 12th, 2019. This is the time of the week when we get together and talk about all the great things in the world of CircuitPython and our community. So this meeting happens every week at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time on Mondays, typically, unless there's holidays or that sort of thing, in which case sometimes we change it. And if that happens, we will definitely let you know. Which brings me to the fact that this meeting is recorded. We record both the audio and we record the Discord CircuitPython channel. This meeting is held on Discord, where we have an audio channel that we get together in. And for those who don't have a microphone or just don't want to talk, they are able to type into the CircuitPython channel, and so that is included in the recording. The videos are available on YouTube and sometimes on Diode Zone as well. We have them available as podcasts. So if it's not available as a podcast service or on your podcast service, please let us know so we can take care of that. CircuitPython is sponsored by Adafruit, so please support them by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. This meeting is held in, I believe, 5 parts. We keep expanding it. And the first part is community news, where we talk about things that are going on in the community of Python on hardware and CircuitPython. The next section is the state of CircuitPython in the libraries, which is a statistical overview of the entire project, where we talk about it overall. Then we talk about the core, and then we talk about the libraries. The next section is Hug Reports, which is an opportunity to call people out for doing something good. And that section is held in a round robin, where we will go through the list alphabetically, starting with me, and loop back to the top and give everyone a chance to give a hug report if they'd like to. The next section is status updates, which is also held in a round robin. It is an opportunity for you to take a few minutes to talk about what you've been doing over the last week and what you're going to be doing over the course of the following week. It's a chance to sync up and to hear what's going on with everyone in the community. In the last section, we lovingly call In the Weeds, which is an opportunity for more long-form discussions, things that don't quite fit into status updates, or things that are just, questions that maybe need further discussion or group discussion. So if you do have anything you think fits in the weeds, please type it into the CircuitPython channel or add it to the notes doc. There is a notes document that goes with this in case you're not into watching the video or you would rather read through it and then scan to the time. There will be timestamps, and it gives you the opportunity to read through the notes instead of watching it or only watching the parts that are most important to you. So in general, if you are listening to this later and you would like to participate, everyone is welcome. We have the notes document, and so if you want to be a part of it but you can't make it to the meeting, feel free to add your status updates and hug reports to the notes document, and we read them off during the meeting. So you can even participate if you're not able to actually participate. So that about sums up everything about the meeting. So we'll go ahead and get on with it, with the first thing being community news. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Phil.
Hello, Katney.
Hello.
Okay, I'm going to start posting up a bunch of links. It was CircuitPython Day on Thursday, 8/8, but it was also CircuitPython Week, and it was CircuitPython Weekend, the weekend before that, and it was CircuitPython Weekend this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out it's pretty much going to be CircuitPython month. So as the notes and more come in from people who have done something with videos or photos. I'll be putting them in newsletter and blog posts, but here is a bit of a preview. So the first one is from the Linux user group in Delhi and the Hardware Hackers Club. Those links in there. And they have videos, photos. They also have some great shots of everyone getting together. And the cake was on a lie. There was cake. But let me get in the chat, let me get a photo of the cake. There it is, CircuitPython cake. So this is second CircuitPython cake that I'm aware of in the world. Then the IoT makers in Israel did a CircuitPython workshop on 8.8. They had some hardware and more. They also decided to do what a lot of hardware folks like to do, is come up with a badge and then have a really interesting time as the deadline approaches. DHL holds things in customs. Parts are late. All the things. If you ever want to know what it's like to run an Adafruit, it's kind of like that. But it's this is just for a conference badge. So it's the full story of design and manufacturing, hardware-packed PCB badge full of surprises. It happened to be CircuitPython powered, so I included that in there as well. On Ask an Engineer, special guest Scott was here, and Scott and Lady to talk about CircuitPython and more. This is one of our regular shows, but we also spent a lot of time on CircuitPython. On Thursday of last week, we did our history of CircuitPython, and that was with Scott and Lady 8 again. And it goes through all the different reasons we do things and also some forward-looking stuff. So do check that out. And then Kattni did a recap of changing lives through open source, passion, and mentoring. And that was from PyOhio, but we did a recap version where all of us talked about her journey and mentoring and all the folks that she's helped. Many of them are here right now in this chat. So that's kind of cool. Next up, I'll be putting this in the newsletter and more. Nicholas is working on PiperCard. So for all the folks out there who know what HyperCard is, you'll really like this. It's a easy way to do GUI applications within Python. So if you're looking for a simple Pythonic framework for beginners, this makes it easy to do that. And the good news is you would be able to see your work on Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, iOS devices, all these things, because it just works. Also works on a PyPortal. That's where it came from. Also, new satellite platform powered by CircuitPython. Check it out. It is called PyCubed. This will be a blog post and a newsletter. So we've hit space a couple times with CircuitPython. I'm looking for the underwater vehicles next for the checklist of things where CircuitPython's gone. Yeah. In other news, Seed is now using the Feather form factor, and the chip that they're using is compatible with CircuitPython. So if someone wanted to do that, you could. I put that in the chat. And then two final things. Our latest video R is for robots out, and I'm trying to get everyone to take a look at this and send it to friends. So if you've heard about machine learning and artificial intelligence, if you believe one day robots are going to be programmed and be able to walk up to us and say hello one day, whatever the code that we put in and whatever our the best and worst of us are going to be inside these things. So we wanted to have something where, make robot friend, not robot enemy. So this is our latest musical for kids, but it's also for adults who are working on all this stuff. So it goes through our coloring book, R is for robot, and it has Adabot and a lot of interesting things. And we also had the same philosophy when we were doing our CircuitPython robotics. How do we do projects and more that are not things that just shoot stuff? It's robot friends that maybe you could have fun with. And then last up, this is, I guess, for folks who may want to do broadcasts where you have guests. You can watch us real time, figure this out. So Google Hangouts Live has been retired. And so that was our show and tell platform that we used for almost 10 years. We had over 300 shows. We did a show and tell every single week. And Google Hangouts Live is gone. One of the cool things about it is it would broadcast to YouTube. So there's a new service called StreamYard, and we tried that, and you can see the results of that in the link that I posted with Kattni for the the recap of her Changing Lives Through Open Source Passion Mentoring, and then last week's show and tell. And then going forward, for the folks that are here that are sometimes on the show and tell, just look for the link in Discord. And not only can we broadcast to YouTube, but it also allows us to broadcast to lots of other places. So theoretically, it's a bit of an upgrade. It's a little different than show and tell, but it works kind of the same, where people are all on the same screen sharing their projects. Pros and cons to every streaming platform, but for our community, it seems like it's working out pretty well. So far so good. So looking forward to seeing some of you on StreamYard with us, or just watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, Mixer, and probably forgot another one. And with that is community news.
Thanks so much, Phil.
Bye-bye.
All right. So next up is the state of CircuitPython and the libraries. So the first look is overall. And overall, we had 13 pull requests merged over the last week. I see some new names, Woeful Derelict and L. Bertrand DC. I have not seen before. And we had 5 reviewers. And also excellent is that there's a name I haven't seen as a reviewer as well, which is Matt Land. So thank you to our new people. Thank you to everybody who has been putting in PRs and taking a look at them. That's been super great. We had 7 closed issues by 5 people and 5 opened by 4 people. So overall, we're net down 2, which is also good. So let's see. Next up is the core, and with that, I will turn it over to Scott.
Hello. All right. In the last week, we had 3 pull requests merged from myself, Dan, and Jeff Epler. 2 reviewers, myself and Dan. We have 18 open pull requests, which is a lot. But I've been out and in New York, so hopefully we'll get through those. And Dan's out this weekend as well, so this number should go down quite a lot in the next couple days. Issues-wise, we had 2 closed issues by 2 people and 3 open by 2 people, for a total of 187 open issues, which is definitely up a bit. We have 7 active milestones. I added 500 issues and 5XO features. That's like if the feature we got in would create a like 5.1 or 5.2 release. And then also a bug fix milestone as well, which is 5.xx dash bug fixes. And we have 9 issues not assigned to milestone as well. So I will take a look at all this stuff now as I get caught up. Download stats by board. We actually only have 1 release out right now. We have a stable 4.1.0. We will do a 5.0 alpha or beta soon, probably this week sometime. But downloads wise for the 4.1.0 stable, we've had 1,459 downloads, and it's been about a week. So again, it's just a reminder that lots more people download our stable releases than the unstable releases, because the 4.1.0 RC1 for its entire lifetime has only had 362 downloads, even though they're actually identical. And those are the stats for the core.
Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is the libraries. So we had 10 pull requests merged. All of our new people are in our authors and reviewers here, and I can't remember if DC Brichetti is also new. I wanted to call them out as well because I think they might be. We had our 6 authors and 5 reviewers, including Matt Land. Thank you again. We have 33 open pull requests, which is about where we've been hovering. Some of these are long-term, others of these are not. And reviewing is a great way to get started with CircuitPython, and reviewing the libraries is an excellent place to start. You can take a look at them, and sometimes there's even something as simple as a typo that got missed, and you may want to post a comment on there. If it's not something you can test, but it's something you took a look at, simply say, I didn't test this, but it looks good. Every kind of review helps us, and it's always a good place to start. We had 5 issues closed by 4 people and 2 open by 2 people, which gets us down to 125 open issues. There's a link to all those issues in the notes on CircuitPython.org, which is finally getting updated. And we had no new libraries in the last week, but we had 6 updated libraries. So we've been getting PRs merged and releases out on 6 new library, or 6 updated libraries rather, and that sums up the libraries, which also sums up the state of CircuitPython and the libraries. So next up is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is our answer to bug reports, which is to say we like to take the opportunity to call people out for doing something good, and just to bring a little more positivity to everything, which I think is definitely needed. So this section will be done in a round robin. And that means it starts with me, and I will go down the list alphabetically. And if there are people who put notes in the document that are not in the meeting, I will read those notes out in alphabetical order, and then we'll continue on with the people that are in the list. When we reach the bottom, we'll jump back to the top and continue down the list until we reach me again. So it's, I'll start as an example. The idea is just if, you've got any kind of thing to say about something that happened over the course of the week. And we also just love group hugs. So, it doesn't have to be something specific if you don't have anything specific to say. So I will start taking time codes. So that is when you hear me typing. I want to thank Tan Newt Scott for running the meetings for me while I was out. I was gone over the course of many Mondays, and so Scott ran the meeting many times in a row, and I really appreciate it. Group hug for the community. It's always nice to be able to be gone for a period of time and know that everything is still going to be running smoothly when I come back. I want to thank Phil and Lamore for hosting my talk for CircuitPython Day. And then these are sort of from the last few weeks, and more related to my keynote. I want to thank Sedacious and Maker Melissa for letting me share their story in my keynote. And I want to say thanks to Crayola, Wolf, Dan H., and Scott, and everyone else who put so much time into helping me to get where I am. Thank you for being mentors and friends. And that's me. So next up is in the notes. Okay, this is from Crayola. Thanks to Tan Newt for the code review on the work in progress PixelBuff API harmonization with PyPixelBuff. Thanks to Katney for her amazing and inspiring keynotes, both the one at PyOhio and the one on CircuitPython Day. And a group hug to the community for continuing to be awesome and being a place that inspires so many. And next up is Maker Melissa.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Just a second here. The document closed on me. Okay, finding the place. Okay. Oh yeah. First, I wanted to give a head get me some questions on my first guide collaboration with you, and also a hug to community members who've started contributing to Blanca.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks. Next up is Mike Barella.
Sorry about that. So this week, I want to give a group hug to everybody who made CircuitPython Day a huge success. We had a lot of material, a lot of people participated, and it was all over social media, mainly Twitter. So thank you all who participated and made this great.
All right. Thanks much. Let's see. Next up, I see Mr. Certainly is lurking, so next up is Sedacious.
I just want to give a quick and again do hug report to C. Grover for being an awesome teacher and always being there to help me with questions when I have them. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks again.
All right. Next up, I have some notes from Summersoft, who is text only today. Hugs to Adafruit, Scott, Kattni, and the community for the inaugural CircuitPython Day. And group hugs squared. And next up is Scott.
Hello. Thank you to Phil and Lamore for hosting Becca and I in New York City. It was super fun. We had a great time, and now we're back and ready to rock and roll this week. Thanks to everyone who participated in CircuitPython Day. It turned out even better than I think we had hoped, and we're already super excited for next year. And lastly, thanks to Marty, Brent, and Trevor for the in-depth discussions we had in person about CircuitPython and what's next for the future. It's going to be super exciting.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Next up is Brent.
Hello, hug to Adafruit and people who did the CircuitPython Day streams. I watched a few of them, and they were really good. Scott for hanging out with me last Thursday and diving into LCDs and getting me set up debugging and doing core work. And Adam for pointing me in the right direction for tracking down a bug, which I'm still tracking down within mini MQTT.
Excellent. Carter is lurking, and next up is C. Grover.
Well, again, a group hug for the team and the community. 4.1.0 was working almost magically. And then thanks to Scott for the amazing speed up of display I/O for TFTs. I'm really looking forward to what he does with OLEDs as well. And then I want to thank Sedacious for giving me the opportunity to do some hard thinking when he asks me some great questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Next, I have Dan in the notes, who is out, but has notes in here. So, hug to Devo for his SD card work, to Jay Epler for multiple PRs, to Jerry N for testing and filing issues, to PT, Lady Ada, Scott, and Kattni for CircuitPython Day videos, and to PT, Lady Ada, and Scott for having the vision for CircuitPython. And we have a couple of people lurking, and that means next up is Teshupu.
Group hug.
Excellent. All right, next up I have some notes from someone who is text only. And that's Fade 2. Hug to Maker Melissa for helping me port Adafruit Python Platform Detect to a Linux RISC-V board. And next up is Hierophect.
Group hug to everybody for a really great CircuitPython Day, and thanks to Scott and Dan for helping me out with some Flash issues.
Excellent. Next up is Jay Epler.
Hi, I want to send out a big group hug to everybody, and thanks for filing those issues. They are always fun to chase down and PR. And I also wanted to thank first-time pull request submitter Matthew Newberg. He's working on a patch to improve the quality of images on LCD displays by dithering, and it looks pretty neat.
Very cool. Thanks very much. Next up is Jerry N.
Hi. So just a quick thanks to Jay Epler for the quick fix to the HID issue that cropped up in 5.0, and to Dave Astells for the cool Minesweeper game. A lot of fun, brings back a lot of memories.
All right. Thanks very much. And that sums up Hug Reports. Thank you, everyone. So next up is status updates. Status updates is an opportunity for us to sync up, to find out what everyone's up to discuss what we've been doing over the last week and what we're going to be doing over the next week. So take a couple minutes, talk about what you're working on. If you're lurking, we will obviously pass you. If you are text only, let us know. We'll read off your notes either from Discord or from the notes doc. I will start again as an example, and then we will head down the list alphabetically, exactly the same way we did for hug reports. So I was out the last 2 weeks, more than that, but I worked the last 2 weeks. So I was out Monday through Wednesday 2 weeks ago, and then Monday last week. So 2 weeks ago, I worked on the PyRuler guide and the fritzing object for the PyRuler. Those went out to like the end of a week ago Friday. And then last week, I worked on the guides and fritzing objects for the 1.3 inch, 1.54 inch, and 2.0 inch IPS TFT LCDs. Worked with Melissa on that, so thanks very much, Melissa, for your help with that. I fixed an issue with the fab print for the Ultimate USB or GPS. It turns out that the dimensions on it were from the previous iteration of the board and not the current iteration. So thank you to whomever caught that and brought it to our attention. And I started work on and routed the TLV493D breakout. It is a 3D magnetic sensor, and I am designing the breakout for it. So over the course of the next week, or this week, I guess, I'm going to finish up the TLV493D. I think the only thing left to do on that is the silk screen. And then I'm going to be remaking MicroPython OLED watch in CircuitPython. It's one of the original MicroPython guides, and we are ready for it to be in CircuitPython since we now have OLED support in Display.io. So that's what I'm going to be doing over this week. I will be traveling on Thursday, and then what I'm going to be working on while I am not here is on a guide on how to work with Pylint. So that will no longer be a mystery. You will be able to install it locally and not have to fight with Travis to lint your code. It will be linted before you put in your PR. So that should be super handy. And I think really needed. And as well, at some point, I'm going to be going through all the CircuitPython board guides and making sure they're all pointed to the right CircuitPython versions. There are banners on some of them that say, if you're still running 2.0, please update to 3.0. We need to change those banners to be more broad and say, if you're running an earlier version, please update to the latest, that sort of thing. And now's a good time before we make a bunch more boards. So I'm going to be going through those and making sure that they're all happy and ready to go. So that is me. Next, I have some notes in the document from Crayola. Unable to make the meeting, but wanted to provide a status update. Worked on PixelBuff to make it use strings for byte order configuration, like PyPixelBuff instead of classes. This freed up some flash space. Managed to get Adafruit.star.py and NeoPixel.py working with the PixelBuff API changes, but still need to push to a fork and test when frozen in. Performance gain using PixelBuff are very noticeable, and managed to squash most bugs, but still have testing to go. Hopefully this coming week, have some PR feedback to address, get Adafruit.star.py and NeoPixel.py compatible with the newer PixelBuff pushed, and test frozen in NeoPixel.py. Next up is Maker Melissa.
Hello. Okay, so last week I worked on completing the code sections for the 1.3 inch, 1.54 inch, and 2.0 inch IPS TFT LCD guides. I finished up the rest of the shields and feather display guides, and I updated the Arduino example codes to include those new 1.3 inch and 2.0-inch displays. And this week I'm going to be working on breakout board guides and other stuff that comes up.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Next up is Mike Barella.
Hello. I've been lurking a lot lately because my CircuitPython work is oftentimes behind the scenes. I'm the final editor for the newsletter, and I do that every week after all the material comes in from the community, and Phil gathers it all up, and Kattni and Scott add theirs, and then it all comes to me to make it look pretty. So I strongly suggest, if you like CircuitPython, to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. It's only weekly. You're never spammed. Your email address is not shared with anyone. That's why it's a different domain than adafruit.com, to try to ensure that. No login or anything, just enter your email address and you'll get CircuitPython goodness every Tuesday before noon Eastern time. So please consider doing that. And I have been working on some CircuitPython. About a year ago, we came up with a slideshow module that you could use for. We had it when the Halloween came out, around Halloween, and with all the good display work that Scott has been doing, and all that that library, the slideshow library, has been updated to use Display.io, and so you get all the goodness that comes with that, including speed ups and everything. So there's a new guide that should be out perhaps today, probably not later than tomorrow, to show you how to use that, along with some sample pictures and everything. So if you have CircuitPython device like PyPortal, PyGamer, PyBadge, and some of the upcoming products that are being envisioned, then this is a natural. I mean, if you want a slideshow on a badge, or you want to have pictures of your pets displayed, or whatever you want in slideshow format, it's now easier and better. And I think it's only like 10 lines of Python code, and that includes like line wrapping. So it's very compact. Basically, anybody can tweak this and get a slideshow up within a few minutes. So look for that soon.
Yeah, thanks for updating that. Okay. Next up is Sedacious.
Howdy. So, I've been up to. I'm working on a bunch of STEMMA QT boards, both brand new ones that fit the mold well, and then updating also existing ones to add them to the available STEMMA QT breakouts. We got the VCNL 4040 and the DS3502 both designed by Kattni out the door last week, so it's nice to see people seeing what that form factor is going to be like. So yeah, we got more of those coming down the pike. I started wiring my house, my living room and my office with NeoPixels, BLE feathers, and airlift, so I can have a NeoPixel IoT house that I can do all kinds of fun stuff with. Turn my house into a rave at a flick of a button if I wish to. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. We've got more stuff coming down the line. I finally debugged the OLED bonnet, figured out what was going on with that. So we got a Rev C of that coming out, or Rev B of that coming out soon. It's close to getting out the doors, but we'll see how that goes. I think that's mainly it. Yeah. Yep, that's it for me.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much. Next up, I have some notes from Summersoft, who is text only. So last week, Mixer Voice, non-DSP capable M0 got 8-bit unsigned and 16-bit signed mixing and level gain working. DSP capable M4 started working on 8-bit unsigned. ASM is difficult. This week, Mixer Voice, keep pushing on DSP 8-bit unsigned. Next up is Scott.
Hello. As most of you know, I was in New York City last week, and while I was there, mostly streamed and chatted with folks at Adafruit HQ. I also did take some time to go do some touristy stuff with my wife, which was super fun. Saw 2 shows, Puffs and Lion King, and they were both really fun. So recommend them both, although Puffs is only running for like till the end of the week. So while I was on the plane, I went through all of the bundle drivers and removed the stop equals keyword arg. There's a pending PR that I did that's been approved that I need to come up with a plan and exactly what order all of these changes land, but expect to see a bunch of pull requests from me this week, removing all the stop equals keyword args from all the different drivers. This week, I'm being a bit optimistic and hoping to wrap up the e-paper and the refresh API changes this week as well. That may end up bleeding into next week a little bit, but really want to be ambitious about it. I do have a presentation that I'm giving on Wednesday night to our local Puget Sound programming Python group, which tends to just be known as Puppy. They asked me to do a talk a couple of weeks ago, and I said, yeah, I could modify the version of my Game Boy teardown talk. So I've started that work, and it should be pretty easy to do. And then the last thing I have on here is for those of you who saw, GitHub came out with continuous integration, continuous deployment stuff for their GitHub Actions offering. And I plan on switching CircuitPython to using that over Travis at some point soon when we can. They've got to opt us into the absolute latest version of that, which uses YAML instead of some other syntax for their files. And the exciting thing is that I pinged them on Twitter and asked them what their concurrency limit was planned on being. And they said kind of planning on 60 concurrent jobs. So that is very exciting. That means that we can split all of our boards apart and run one task per board, hopefully, and get a lot of speed ups on our Travis build because it's just gotten worse and worse. So that should be super cool. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Looking forward to that.
Me too.
All right. Next up is Brent.
Hello. I figured out an issue within Mini MQTT, which cropped up another issue as I was figuring it out, which is really confusing. I've been working on bug fixing it and doing some refactoring of the code to make it more legible today and hopefully tomorrow. I assembled a PyPortal Mega last week, created variant for Arduino and CircuitPython. Thanks, Scott, for helping me get started with LCD work and core work. Also, we fixed a bug within Terminal.io while we were at it. And then this week, I'm going to review some PRs, specifically the ESP32 AP PR and then the Ethernet work for the WISNet 1500. And then I want to hopefully fix this, even though I kind of have it working, but I want it really working. And hopefully release parts of it over the course of the next week or two.
Okay. Sounds good. Next up is C. Grover.
I tried to run some performance-sensitive MIDI sniffer code on the PyPortal and PyGamer this week, and the PyGamer just surprised me. It was much faster than the PyPortal and is so fast that I'll be able to use it for my portable MIDI sniffer. Pretty happy about that.
Nice.
I posted a video link to the test. So the PyGamer and the PyBadge are going to make some excellent candidates for standalone portable projects where the front panel is already included, which is kind of cool. This week, I'm going to focus on wrapping up a Stemma 16-bit DAC project, a couple of mini 10-volt boost breakouts, which are really handy in the Eurorack realm. And I've got a bunch of MIDI projects coming up. I've got 2 board designs that are going to head to Osh Park later this week. And one is a feather wing that can be used to provide Stemma and Stemma QT connections to existing feathers and feather wings. It gives me an opportunity to use my classic MIDI interface wing standalone, which is going to be handy. And then I just discovered last night how to output MIDI from my digital audio workstation to my Eurorack setup. So that's going to be a huge distraction this week. You can imagine sweetening some existing recordings with synth sounds from the rack, all synchronized to the existing live tracks. It's like having a step sequencer of unlimited length, infinitely programmable tempo, and with an unlimited number of voice channels. And it's just blowing my mind. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with that.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. Next up is Dave Bracetti.
Hello.
Hello.
Here's my report. Last week I showed a little picture of 3D animation of balls flying in the air, and I said I had a goal of using the Circuit Playground Express's accelerometer to control that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made that, but I'm having trouble reliably reading the serial data from the CPX, and so maybe somebody could send me an example of a little Python program that reliably reads from the serial ports. And then, Kattni, you helped me polish an example of mapping accelerometer data to NeoPixel colors.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote a new example, which is, it looks like gravity is pulling a white pixel down as you change the orientation of the CPX. And that one may be more you want to use as, I know you want to keep the examples kind of simple, but anyway, there it is. And this week I probably will have to turn to some work, but I'll be back.
Do me a favor and ping me with directly with that example. We might, because I love the idea of you being able to submit more examples regardless of how complicated they are. And so maybe we make a folder in that repo that is, you know, more advanced examples or something, and we start including things there as well.
Great idea. Well, there's already a pull request there, and I noted in there kind of what I said here that you might want to consider complicated, but that sounds great. So that's all from me.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
And thank you for sticking through that lengthy back and forth in the PR. All right.
Oh, that was educational for me. It's great. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Next up, I have some notes from Dan, who is missing the meeting. Enhanced BLE descriptor functionality. Added specification of permissions and length information for characteristics and descriptors. Internal refactoring. This is all in support of BLE HID. Initial implementation of Python HID library now being debugged. Next up is Deshipu.
Okay, so last time I showed a conference badge I was designing that's based on the Pew Pew. So that badge is now in production, and the conference is next month. So that's on time. Another thing I was working this week on is the Pew Pew M4, also known as the Micro Game Turbo, because I kind of merged the two projects together now, and I was working on getting the bootload, the custom bootloader for it to be configured properly. It's quite ingenious the way the make code bootloader has all the configuration for the code inside of it. So that's that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. All right. If time allows, I'm going to work on audio support for MicroPython. for the ESP32 port in the state library, because apparently they have DAC support now in there, so it should be possible to have WAV files playing.
Nice.
Also on MicroPython, not just CircuitPython. So that's it.
Excellent. Thank you. Next up is Hierophect.
Okay, so for the last couple weeks, I've been kind of consolidating everything going on in the STM32 port for CircuitPython, which includes getting just everything, all the two different discovery boards that we're supporting, just making sure that all the features were lining up across those, getting bus.io working, and then shooting for, in the next couple days, getting full Flash support, because we previously only had support over UART, hoping to get full Flash support over USB, so that, you know, it's a CircuitPython board of the kind that on Atmel and NRF. And then, and so bundling with that, a completed version of bus.io and a completed version of analog IO, so that we'll have kind of the whole package of bus.io, analog, digital, and USB support on STM32, which will be kind of an exciting first step for that. After that, I may take a step back and just kind of document the process that it took to get to that point. Future ports to, you know, Cypress or NXP or whatever other boards might come down the pipeline in the future, would have what I'm up to.
All right. Thanks very much. Jason is lurking, so next up is Jay Epler.
Good afternoon again. This past weekend, I got to play with CircuitPython a fair bit. Chased a SAMD audio bug that had to do with DMA channels. I saw that there's a reported PyPortal crash, so I used that as a justification to get some hardware, and I will be looking into that later this week when I have the hardware. I did opt into the GitHub Actions beta, which is related to the CI stuff, but they put you on a list, so I will be waiting, and hopefully there will be stuff to do still when I get my permission to work on it. And I just wanted to share that I use metafilter.com as kind of a social discussion website, and I made a post about PyOhio, and it's gotten a modest positive response. So if you are a Metafilter person, hello, and otherwise stop in. It's a great place for hanging out with people.
All right. Thanks very much. Next up is Jerry.
Hi, so I have a little more time to play with stuff this week, so I stumbled across a couple of issues in 5.0. One was the keyboard HID broke, but thanks Jeff, Jay Epler fixed it pretty quickly, and now it's working again. And let's see, then I also stumbled across an issue with the PyPortal that's still out there, I think. And that it at least on 5.0 only, if you run certain programs, and I still haven't exactly pictured which ones, they seem to be ones that use display IO. If you do a hard reset, it'll run just fine. And then if you stop it, you know, Control C and then do a Control D soft reboot and try and run the code again, it goes to safe mode with a hard fault. Very repeatable, there's a test program out in the issue that's a pretty short one, but I'm not coming across any good reason for it. But it only seems to happen right now in the PyPortal. I tried it on a PyGamer and can't get it to happen. So kind of an issue, a puzzling one there. And I tried to put an SWD connector on my PyPortal, and that went disastrously trying to hand solder it. So I finally broke down and ordered myself a little hot air station.
Yeah, been there.
Looking forward to having that tool to save some future boards, and I think I may be able to resurrect this board once I get the station to fix the capacitor. I think I fried. So, and let's see. Otherwise, I did get some time to play with some of the new BLE stuff. That's been a lot of fun, and so far, the only problems I've had have been my own confusion. It's all working really well. and trying it on a bunch of different NRF boards, and they've all been working fine. So Dan's done a really nice job at getting that out there. And I got a new weed whacker today, so woohoo!
Excellent.
It's good.
New tools are always fun.
Yeah.
All right. And that is status updates. So next up is In the Weeds. And this is the opportunity for more long-form discussions. If you have anything you want to discuss in the weeds, please add it to the notes document or post it to the CircuitPython channel so we can paste it into the notes document. But I already have 3 in the weeds topics for today in the notes document. So we are going to do those in order, and I would like to first turn it over to Jay Epler.
Hi, so this is something that has been on my mind for a while, but it was prompted again by seeing Fonz of Fall run into trouble. He has a Trellis M4 with CircuitPython, and I think something went wrong with the content of the program on there. And so the idea is, what if we ship a UF2 file that fully reinitializes the board, including the bundled program, to what would have come from the original manufacturer? So I see benefits to this. If it is scriptable and part of the build process, it's repeatable. This option will help users, which is really where I started from. And once it's done, we can go back and say, oh, it was a 3.1 board. What was in main.py in 3.1? And go back and get and see that. And then it's possible that for board manufacturers, having one UF2 file would remove a step from their manufacturing process, but that's just speculation. Now, the downsides are if a user uses the wrong UF2 file, now they've destroyed their program, their main.py. It would double the number of build artifacts, and we are running up against some limits on that. Mm-hmm. And we would have to do some work for every board that would include getting those initial files from whoever has them or from guides or whatever. But at that point, they would kind of become the official. And so I have written an alpha quality program that can create a file system with all the stuff that CircuitPython puts on it when it formats it internally, and it's called mkfatimage. There's a link to that GitHub within the document notes. Mm-hmm. So is this idea worth pursuing? Anybody have any thoughts?
So our way of dealing with this was that there is a GitHub repo that has all of the shipped, or at least that's the plan, has all of the shipped software for every board. So
okay, I was not aware that was out there, so that would be great to know about.
Yeah, it doesn't actually have everything though. That's the problem.
No, it doesn't, and it's still a work in progress, and that was why I said in theory. But that was in theory like our answer to people losing the initial code, was that we wanted to have a GitHub repo that that had all that available. I can see a lot of things going wrong with this idea, but I also completely understand where you're coming from with it. It's an excellent concept. Scott, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think I would worry about people accidentally overwriting their own code, but I do also
that's the number one thing that I worry about too.
Yeah, but I do like this idea of being able to get back to default state entirely pretty quickly. And I think it's going to get more interesting, especially if we go to the IMX RT series, which is what the Teensy4 is. It's going to be interesting because the code of like CircuitPython would actually be stored on the same QSPI probably as the like user's actual program as well. So theoretically, I kind of imagine us moving to a UF2 for that chip series that actually is flashing, like the bootloader and the bootloader and CircuitPython and the file system all live on a QSPI flash.
Oh yeah, I wasn't really thinking about the fact that on so many of these boards, it's a separate flash where the file system is. So UF2 wouldn't really work.
Well, that doesn't. It wouldn't work currently, but there, like, I guess what I'm saying is that like we should probably add the ability to flash a QSPI flash from UF2. If we want to have a UF2 bootloader for like the IMX RT, like that's, I think, where we're going. Now that still leaves the question of whether we want to deal with like flashing the entire thing as one unit, or whether we want to actually maybe have two UF2 files where they have different regions of the same memory that they're flashing. So yeah, I don't know exactly, but I think you're on the right track. And as I think the first step is probably just kind of what Katney's pointing out of, like, we have this repository that was meant to be that thing. But it's just we haven't done the legwork to get the code out in the open to do that. Internally at Adafruit, like, that code goes along with tester code. And I've pushed a little more to get it there, but it's one of those things where it's like we really need to find somebody else within Adafruit who has access to that stuff to get it moved over. So yeah, it's I think you're on the right track, but I think that the first step is actually just getting all of the sample code and kind of like as shipped stuff documented and published.
All right. Well, if this ever comes back around to being something to work on now, please give me a ping and I'll throw in my effort.
Yeah, just to wrap it up, the other place that code can live is on the product guides themselves. We do sometimes put it as a download on the like final page of the guide. Is the other place to look.
It might almost be worth using the GitHub embed, like putting it on that repo that we created for it and then embedding it.
Yep. Yeah.
That way it's in one place. We're not trying to update the Learn guide when we change the code.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's weird too, because we may actually want like multiple CircuitPython versions worth of the code that comes on the devices as well, even if we didn't ship with it necessarily. So yeah, it's definitely something we should figure out how we do it exactly. I think is complicated. Although the other way we could do it was just order a bunch of the devices and just snag everything off them. To be honest,
it feels silly to have to go about it that way.
It does, but that's one way to do it. So I don't know. Between all of us in this call, we could probably get most of them.
Yeah. I will give this some thought, and I will, Jeff, I'll ping you offline.
Okay, that's great.
And maybe we can talk about whether or not this is something we want to, like how we want to go about it, and what makes the most sense, and then whether there's something you can do.
Okay.
So I'm making a note. All right. Excellent. So, next up, I've got something in the notes from Summersoft, who I believe is still text only. I'm not hearing otherwise, so I will go ahead and read it. All right, I will read it off. Regarding Mixer Voice, there are currently function stubs for 8-bit signed and 16-bit unsigned source formats. To my knowledge, these are quite rare. Wavefile doesn't even support them. Should they be supported or dropped?
I think dropped. I'm pretty sure that in the audio PWM work I did, it looks like the assumption is that 8-bit is the sign is inferred from the number of bits. So we would be wrong at a lot of levels if we got one of those files.
Seconded.
All right. There you go, Summersoft. Next up, I have one from someone who is not in the meeting, which is excellent.
Sorry, that's me. That's my work login.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So we had Mystery Deshipu, who has one, and I will turn it over to you then if you'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, okay. So I looked at the MakerCode bootloader stuff because I wanted my console to be compatible with that.
Right.
And I discovered that they have this pretty interesting configuration format for basically the definition of the board, basically the stuff that we have in pins.h or pins.c in our board definitions. And as far as I know, at least the boards, the Adafruit boards that are compatible with MakerCode Arcade also have that in the bootloader. So I just thought maybe, first of all, how hard it would be to have a library for reading that information. Can we do that in plain Python, or would we need some C helper for this? And the second thing, once it's there, why not use it? Why not, for instance, the initialization code for the display could use that automatically instead of having to be manually, initialized in the board.c file and so on. So I don't really see a lot of benefits from that, other than the fact that it's already there. So maybe it would be nice to follow a standard and have the information in one place. Maybe, I don't know. Just I thought I will throw it out there.
Yeah, I think in terms of reading it, like I wouldn't be against adding a way from C to just basically read bytes from memory, and that should be enough for it. Writing gets trickier because then people can really screw themselves. But I wouldn't necessarily be against that as well. I think it's a huge risk to allow people to write memory, but reading memory is probably okay. Although I guess you could probably hang yourself pretty hard if you read the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, if those are registers, then even reading them can have side effects. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, maybe some kind of advanced C module that just allows memory access and then like sets a flag so that if you safe mode or whatever, like we say like, oh, you were doing this dangerous thing, like it's probably that.
Yeah, so actually that's a separate thing, but that would allow us to also experiment and have things like sleep support, for instance, initially implemented in Python.
Right.
And then re-implement that in C when it works.
Yeah, and it would be very dangerous because like you definitely not have any security because you'd be able to poke and peek the CircuitPython memory as well, which would be.
Yeah, fortunately we don't have users in there. So.
Yeah. I mean, we've never pretended to be secure in the first place. I don't know. I think I don't think we're going to get away from the model of like download this version of CircuitPython for this board, which I think is what they were trying to get away. Well, the reason that they have to do it is that their downloads, their UF2 downloads, are actually all the same, right? Like,
you only select the architecture, right?
Right, but not the board. Yeah, I think it's potentially interesting, but I don't think I would change the way that we do board in it from the start, because we're going to want to add different pin names and stuff too.
Okay, that's fair.
It's worth looking at and being aware of.
Okay, excellent. So next up, I have something from Hierophect, if you would like to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm just hoping to check in. I think this has come up before. I've seen some references to it, but just wondering about the kind of the obstacles for implementing standby on so that you can enter a low power state with CircuitPython. Because I've had a couple of questions from just kind of the local community around me, particularly given the new e-paper support. Because e-paper is super low power and can hold its display when you're in standby mode. In particular for like sensors and battery run applications, I've just been getting a lot of interest for that. So I was just hoping to kind of check back in on for that, and what kind of quantity of work would need to be done to do that.
Yeah, so I think there is a one of our oldest issues is exactly around sleep. So I would definitely just chime in there and follow that conversation. Like, let's still have conversations there. I think somebody recently just took a stab at it again. I forget who it was. But the gist is that it's actually a bit tricky to figure out when it's okay to go into sleep, because CircuitPython has this model of like being able to run things in the background for you. So like if you are doing audio playback and then call sleep, what happens? If you're doing a PWM out and you call sleep or do time.sleep, like what happens? The USB connection is another example. Bluetooth is an example as well. So I think, yeah, it's tricky and it's worth working on. Like, we do want to do it at some point, but to do it right, I think is hard.
Is the concern mostly that you would leave the user in a state that on recovery would be wonky, like you'd be entering an unexpected, the program would lose track of what's going on, like yeah, I guess what like if it was hacked together, what would be the big disadvantages of the hacked version?
Well, presumably you want your VM, like you want to preserve all your memory, so that when you wake back up, you start where you left off. I don't know if that's always the case with the way that C developers do it.
We could start with a deep sleep thing, similar to how the ESP8266 does it.
Okay.
Where you basically put your microcontroller in a low power mode, and the only way of exiting that mode is through restart. So you can save some bits in the non-volatile memory to tell your program what to do on the next restart, but basically your program, when you call sleep, your program ends.
It's more, yeah, it's stop.
Yeah, and that's still very useful because on many platforms you can first schedule the restart at some delay.
Mm-hmm.
So it only sleeps for a certain amount of time and then restarts.
Right.
So that's useful for periodic things like PyPortal refreshing, for instance, or things like that. Because the display doesn't have to be switched off, right? It can keep displaying.
Right.
And then, yeah, and on some platforms you can even set up like interrupts that will restart it. So it will. You can have a Pygamer console that goes to sleep and wakes up when you press a button.
Right.
Right. It doesn't. Well, it starts from the beginning, but it switches on when you press a button. Then you can remove. Then you can skip the power buttons on all your devices, basically.
Yeah.
Because you just put them in low power mode and they go to sleep. So I think that would be the easiest way to implement, and already gives us a lot of functionality.
Right. My concern with that is that it's hard. Like, my ideal for the way sleep works is like whenever people are calling time.sleep 60 seconds, we just sleep, right? Like, and then it picks up where it left off. Like,
yeah, well, but that's a huge, especially on some platforms where you have all the timers in there that can be in different configurations, and then you have to disable those timers or reconfigure them to actually enter certain modes and so on. This is a huge can of worms.
I don't know. I'm maybe missing some stuff that would make this idea hard, but I feel like there's a lot of merit to what I think is what Radomir's proposing, which is like, yes, our sleep is going to be stop running, and our resume is going to be start over, right? And we can just figure out whatever we can either save some state that we can do things differently when we resume, or however else. But just okay, tie up all the loose ends and shut down for now, and when I reboot, I'll do something else. Would be, I think that by itself, I think would be relatively easy compared to the alternatives and have a lot of value potentially. So I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, I feel like just pitching in, the ideas that I've heard for this have all been for basically timed sleep for sensors, right?
Right.
Or some kind of thing that needs to, run for 6 months and can't be plugged in, right? So it needs to be self up like once 24 hours, once, the latest one that I heard was just for like farm sensors or something like that. And so, it's not a sleep mode that needs to be, mixed in between functionality. It's really just parts for the device, so that it can, hop back on again and maybe recover some stuff out of non-volatile memory. So, the solution would work great for that.
I think maybe this is a variation of the same thing as what the Hierophect was just talking about, but I'm just thinking like, is it possible to allow only like a constrained state to be slept in, like where you're not trying to do you're not going to try and resume into full CircuitPython everything that could have possibly been happening. You're just going to say, okay, when I come out, I'm gonna, I don't know, call this thing with this state coming back from the sensor, or some way of making, constraining the scope that we're trying to do, right? So we don't have to do every bell and whistle. I don't know to what extent that makes sense.
Or conversely, could it be possible to maybe force the user to constrain the extent of what their device is doing before entering sleep?
That's basically what I was kind of proposing, is like, okay, if you want to sleep, you can only do these things before you go into sleep.
Yeah, and it forces the user to do their homework a little bit, just in terms of like shutting everything down, getting ready for sleep, right? So get ready for sleep, then you can enter sleep, and then you can pop back out of sleep when you need to, without having all these complications involved.
I am open to people that want to do this, like start from scratch when you come back from sleep, but like I don't think that's the way that I would do the work. Like,
we could have both. We can have deep sleep right now, basically, because it's easy to implement.
Right.
And then we can keep working on the more sophisticated way of doing that.
Right. I'm just saying that, like, if I put cycles towards it, I'm going to do it the way that I think is best for users, which I think is it sleeps when it can automatically, and you don't need to worry about it. We don't need to, like, if we do time.sleep and it sleeps, we don't need to teach you anything else. Right? Like,
you want sleep that's an automatic, like the way that Embed does it, or like a real-time operating system does it, where it enters sleep when it's not otherwise operating. Not really so much a standby mode where it's, it's off for like a set amount of time.
But then there are questions like, what should happen with GPIO pins that are set to high, for instance? Should they remain high?
Right.
Because they are draining the battery that way.
Yes.
And stuff like that.
Well, what I'm getting at is like Python already has a way to say I'm not going to do anything for a set amount of time, and that's time.sleep. Right? Like.
Yeah, right. But I think we want more something like set exit, basically.
Sure, and like I'm like, if somebody wants to do that work, that's totally fine. And like somebody's already like, I forget the person that already has a deep sleep module and is experimenting with that. But
was that Bobricious?
Was it Happy Day?
Happy Day definitely did it at one point, but it was recent that somebody did it. Happy Day did it in the past, and like, let me look. I can see if I can find it, but the point is that like, happy to see people work on it, but I think the best way to do it is to have sleep be smart, like time.sleep be smart. And basically, whenever any of our code is waiting, we just call into this thing that's smart.
Well, but then I mean, time sleep only sleeps for a certain time, right? You can only wake up on the timer, basically.
Right.
And you can't do things like wake up on a button press.
Right. That's true.
So
I think the had something kind of similar to this where they have the normal low power mode, which is completely timer run. But I think they actually, it was based on requests that they're now implementing a full standby mode, which does kind of the forced shutdown of everything and puts the system into wake up. And it is a separate system, so it's not their main sleep system anymore. It's a separate, it's kind of its own whole separate thing, which is the standby mode, which is, you know, then you wake up based on a button or whatever else.
Right.
So,
yeah,
right.
I think that makes a lot of sense because this is a separate use case, basically.
Right.
And when people want, when people are asking about low power mode, I think they want that use case, not the time sleep thing.
Right. The earlier one.
But like our audience is not embedded developers, right? Like our audience is to make it easy for the person who's just learning to program and wants to have a thing that reads a temperature every hour, right? Like, and you're going to teach that person time.sleep. You're not going to teach them about sleep states of a micro.
Right. But you know, in some cases, like waking off of an interrupt is something that could be worked into a very, very beginner level project, right? I mean, and exposing that, I mean, that's where a couple of these have come from, is just folks who just want to have a very early or a very simple based wake up. But I definitely hear what you're saying in terms of it being, you know, a little bit further out there.
Right. Yeah, I was having a discussion in New York, I think with Phil and Lamore, about how the fact that we put a lot of effort under the hood into making the API on top very simple, which is why I'm trying to push that. Like I'm not trying to stop the work that does the more advanced scenario, but I want to make sure that that in the end we serve the people that we're just teaching to write a while true loop with a time.sleep 60 in it, right? Like that should work. That should use as little power as it can by default. So, yeah.
Okay,
and
so
it is work that we want to do in the future, and I have a feeling we'll probably tackle it when we do the ESP32S2 stuff when that's closer.
Oh, by the way, are there any plans for that?
I think it's safe to say we will do it. It's just a matter of when we get hardware that actually has working USB.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, we got sample stuff, and the samples just don't, like, the USB doesn't work in the samples. If I had to, so no promises, but I think kind of where we're looking is my efforts are going to go into NRF 52840 BLE workflow stuff, and then after that we'll probably tackle the IMXRT, because that's going to unlock some higher power stuff for us, like USB high speed and things like that. And then hopefully around that time, the ESP32S2 will be more viable, and then we'll take a look at that. It's kind of like where we're going at this point. Always subject to change, of course, but that's kind of the plan now. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I'll take a look at I'll figure out who the latest deep sleep person was.
Great.
And I'll post a link to that issue right now too.
All right.
So we can follow up there.
Thank you very much, everyone. That was an excellent In the Weeds. And I think we are ready to wrap up. Let's see. So this has been the CircuitPython Weekly for August 12th, 2019. We are here every week, and we post this to both YouTube and to your favorite podcast service. And if we are not on your favorite podcast service, please let us know so we can rectify that situation. Thanks everyone for participating. This has been an excellent meeting. I'm glad that everyone could make it. And with that, I want to say thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.